Batman, City of Fear, Gotham City, New Jersey, Monday, October 18th, 2021. It was a normal rainy autumn in Gotham City, and one police officer was finished with his shift and he was on his way to his favorite diner for a quick bite of dinner before he heads home. The police officer sat at the diner and he waited patiently for the waitress to come to him. He looked at the television news, and the television news was just the same old news. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. Then the waitress walks up to him and takes his order.
So, what'll it be? Your usual?
Sure.
Okay, chicken salad with no dressing.
No, you know what? Make it waffles. With a side of bacon. Don't tell my wife.
The waitress, who knew the police officer for a long while now, found it very unusual, and the officer says to her, "Hey, I had a rough day, I deserve it." And then the waitress walks off to drop the order to the cook. As the police officer was enjoying his coffee, a young man comes up to him and says,
"Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, Officer Owens. There's a guy smoking over there in the corner booth."
Wait here. I'll have a word.
Then the police officer gulps his coffee, gets up, and walks over to the far corner booth. There he saw the smoke, but there was something unusual about the smoke. It was not cigarette smoke, and definitely wasn't any smoke he saw. This smoke was red, and the man sitting in the booth was wearing a red hoodie. The officer couldn't see his face, and when the officer puts his hands on his shoulder and he says, "Excuse me, sir, there is no smoking allowed inside public establishments," suddenly the man in the hood quickly turns around, and his face was not a human face. It was a very demonic looking face. The police officer quickly screamed and jumped back, and suddenly he saw as the diner was starting to rip away. He was under the influence of some sort of powerful hallucinogen. His state of fear was elevated. Everyone around him in the diner were monsters, and suddenly all hell broke loose as everyone started attacking one another in the diner. The police officer quickly drew his gun and started shooting down everybody until one of the monsters takes him out. The next night, the news was abuzz with what happened inside the famed Paulie's Diner. And as people were huddled in their homes watching the news, all of a sudden, the transmission was interrupted. But it was just not only in the televisions, it was also in the radios, the city PA system, and the digital billboards. And soon, the infamous Scarecrow was being seen and heard across the city as he was delivering his threat.
"Gotham City, what you saw last night was a demonstration of my new and improved fear toxin, and that was only a few grams worth of it. Now, you have 24 hours to evacuate the city. If you do not, you will all suffer the effects of my new fear toxin."
Soon the entire city heeded the Scarecrow's warning and fled. Everybody left the city, young and old, and those who couldn't leave the city were assisted by city buses that served as evacuation buses and trains that also were carrying people out of the city. Soon, Gotham City, a city of 4.5 million people, was now a ghost town. The only ones who stayed behind were the entire police force, nursing staff, and hospitals taking care of patients who were too critically ill to move, and the criminals who stayed behind to loot and rob, taking advantage of the chaos. Meanwhile, inside the GCPD building, it was complete hell inside, as everyone was scrambling doing their work. Manning the front desk of the police station was none other than Aaron Cash, who found work as a policeman after the Arkham City incident of January. Well, he was answering phones and trying to direct people where to go when suddenly the commissioner exits his office and he asks Commissioner Gordon, "So, Commissioner, what's the status on the National Guard?" Commissioner Gordon says to Cash, "Well, the National Guard won't be here until tomorrow morning." Cash says, "Oh, just great." And then a woman walks up to both of them and she says, "Commissioner, Lieutenant Cash, we have a problem. We lost contact with 4 police cars. We can't raise them." And Gordon says to her, "Just great. We are losing officers like no tomorrow out there." And, he says with a huge stress in his voice. And then he says to Cash, "Cash, if you need me, you know where I'll be." And then Gordon walks away from the desk. The woman asks Cash, "Lieutenant, where's he going?" And then Cash answers her, "Well, if I know the commissioner, he's going to call the one man who could save us all." Commissioner Gordon was now on the roof. As he was heading for the big switch to turn on the bat signal, he pulls down on the switch and the massive signal lights the stormy skies. From a distance, on top of the massive TV transmitting tower of the old Panessa Studios, was Batman, rain-soaked. He stood looking at the bat signal. He knew the commissioner needed him. And so Batman leaps from the giant antenna and glides to the lower levels. He runs rooftop to rooftop. He finally reaches the GCPT building, and he says to the commissioner,
"Jim, I'm here."
The commissioner says, "Thank God. You're the only man that could save us now," he says. And then he goes on to explain to Batman, "I'm spread thin right now. All my men are all over the place. And the National Guard is taking its sweet time to mobilize and get here. And to make matters worse, we don't know where the Scarecrow's hiding out at." Then he goes on to ask Batman, "You don't think he's going to really detonate a chemical weapon in the city?" And Batman says to the commissioner,
Knowing him, he will. But my question is, who's helping him? There's somebody behind this. Somebody that gave him the ingredients to make the new fear toxin formula.
Then their conversation was interrupted by the commissioner's radio and something that was going on nearby.
Attention all units, attention all units. Officer in trouble, surrounded by rioters on the intersection of 29th and 24th Street. Repeat, any available units. Officer in trouble on the intersection of 29th and 24th Street near Little Tokyo.
The commissioner says, "God damn it, I'm losing officers like crazy." And then when he turns to look at Batman, Batman was gone. And then he says aloud, "Go get him, Batman. I can't be losing any more officers tonight." Well, the officer was definitely in trouble, as a group of rioters had him surrounded. They all had bats, 2x4s, lead pipes, and crowbars. They were ready to kill him. All of a sudden, Batman drops from the sky and starts taking them down quickly. It was over. As Batman was walking towards the officer who was begging him for help,
Hey, Batman! Don't leave me here, please.
it was beginning to rain, and Batman grabs the officer by the hand and he says to the officer,
"You're safe."
and he pulls up the officer. And then the officer says to Batman,
Thanks, Batman. I thought they were gonna kill me.
as the cop was thanking Batman, the headlights of a speeding Humvee shined on them. That Humvee was heading high speed towards them. Batman quickly grabbed the cop and grabbed his grapple gun and grappled the officer to safety as the Humvee plowed right through the statue in the center of the roundabout. They were now on the safety of a rooftop, and the cop says to Batman,
The city's overrun. We don't stand a chance.
and Batman says to the police officer,
"Stay here. I'll send someone to pick you up."
and the police officer asks Batman,
What are you doing?
Batman, answers the officer.
I'm evening the odds.
And Batman pulls out from his utility belt his Batmobile communicator, and he says into it,
Come.
and Batman leaps from the top of the building. As he was falling down, he quickly glides and lands safely on the streets below as the headlights of an incoming vehicle shines on him. Batman speaks into the Batmobile communicator saying stop, and the new Batmobile comes to a screeching halt. Batman quickly runs to the new Batmobile. As the driver's side canopy opens, he leaps in there, closes the canopy, takes it off autopilot, and communicates with Oracle.
Oracle, a gray Humvee tried to run me and a police officer down. Where is it now?
Oracle says, oh, I picked it up on the satellite, Batman. It's heading down 24th Street, and the police are pursuing it right now. Batman acknowledges it and floors the pedal to the metal in the new Batmobile. The Batmobile was coming up onto the police chase against the Humvee as the vehicle itself was going well over 130 miles an hour. Inside the Batmobile, Batman sees he was coming quick onto the chase. He quickly slows down a bit and activates the main weapon of the new Batmobile, a very powerful, new and improved next-gen laser gun. The Humvee that everybody was pursuing began to fire missiles from the rear. It hit one of the cop cars, and another cop in the other pursuing vehicle screams over the radio, "Oh my god, that thing's got missiles!" And then the commissioner is heard over all the radios saying, "Alright, back away, let Batman deal with this one." And the pursuing cop cars quickly pull away, and now it was just Batman and the Humvee. The Humvee was ready to fire another missile right at the Batmobile, but the Batmobile's laser quickly destroyed it. And as Batman was getting closer and closer to the Humvee, knowing that that vehicle was armored, Batman increased the laser power to the equivalent of a missile impact. And soon, Batman fires the laser again and damages the Humvee. The Humvee loses control and crashes into a storefront. Batman stops the Batmobile, puts it on park, opens the canopy, and jumps out. The driver of the Humvee was crawling out. He was badly injured from the wreck. And then Batman confronts him and interrogates him.
Talk.
The driver says, "Screw you, Batman," and quickly pulls out a syringe gun and tried to use it on Batman. But Batman quickly threw the man to the ground, disarmed him, and had his left arm twisted, and he says to the driver,
Tell me what I want to know, or else I'll break every bone in your body.
And the driver says, okay. All I know is that Scarecrow is operating out of a penthouse in Little Tokyo. Honest, that's all I know. And then Batman says to the driver,
Lie to me and I'll break the other one.
Then Batman proceeds to break the arm of the driver he had twisted. Then Batman grabs the syringe gun that he had in the other hand, and then he pulls out the vial and uses detective mode to scan the vial. Soon, Oracle chimes in, and she says, "Batman, what's going on? I just saw the scan that you uploaded to the computer. This is not the usual fear toxin of the Scarecrow. I'm reading some changes to it, some big changes." And Batman says to Oracle,
I'll be over with it later so we can get a further analysis. Right now, I have to go to Little Tokyo. I have an appointment with hopefully the Scarecrow.
So Batman made his way to the Little Tokyo penthouse. He was on the roof. It began to rain hard again. And he used the detective mode. He could see there were several armed men inside. and Batman burst through the skylight and began to take them all down in rapid succession. Afterwards, he searched the penthouse, empty. He saw a chamber inside with plexiglass and a giant display screen, and soon Scarecrow was on the display screen saying to Batman,
Sorry I'm not here to tend to you personally, Batman, but I have some very big fish to fry, but I will get to you in due time.
Batman was upset that the Scarecrow wasn't there, but Batman decided to use his detective mode and scan the faces of all the unconscious mercenaries that were there. As he scanned the faces, they were uploaded to the Bat computer, and Alfred chimes in saying, Sir, the scans are revealing that these men are former Tiger employees. And to Batman, it all made sense. The weapons, the gear, it was all leftovers from when they were in Arkham City. It was a mystery to what happened to Tiger and all its employees, but now it's starting to be apparent. They just went to work for somebody else. They worked for the Scarecrow, or so Batman thought. Batman searched the room, but it yielded no clues except for one laptop, and Batman smashed the laptop and took the hard drive, and then he decided to head over to Oracle's clock tower. At the clock tower, Batman went in through the secret entryway, and he greeted Oracle, and Oracle says to him, Well, Batman, do you have it? And Batman shows Oracle the vial of new fear toxin and the hard disk. Oracle takes the vial of fear toxin and heads over to her state-of-the-art chemical analyzer and puts it in there and hits a few buttons so it began to analyze the new fear toxin's contents. While Batman takes off his wet cowl and heads over to the computer console and puts the hard disk inside a slot and begins to decipher the codes to get inside the hard disk to see what was inside. Afterwards, Oracle says, My God, Bruce, according to this analysis, this new fear toxin is so potent that it could go through gas masks. And then Bruce says to Oracle, That's not good. That's not good at all. And then the computer dings and Bruce looks at it and he says, Bingo, it's inside the hard disk. And Bruce begins to shuffle through the files and it yielded nothing. All it yielded was just photos of weapons, tanks, vehicles. And Bruce says angrily, Damn it, we hit a dead end. And Oracle says, Don't worry, Bruce. We'll find the Scarecrow where he's hiding out at. He has to be somewhere within the city. And then it dawned on Bruce. And Bruce says, Oracle, do you still have that giant AC generator? And Oracle says, Yeah, I do. What do you need it for? I know how we can find Scarecrow. And then he gets up. He goes over to the area of the room where Oracle had some devices stored away for Batman's emergency use, namely an AC generator that ran on tritium that produced huge amounts of electrical current and several uplink devices. And then Bruce grabs the three objects and then he puts on his cowl and heads out. And then on his way to his destination, he tells Oracle through the Batmobile's communicator that he plans to use the microwave transmission tower in the Falcone shipping yards and the Panessa Studio radio tower, so that way they could locate the radio signals that were being used by the Scarecrow to transmit orders to his men. Oracle said it was a brilliant idea. So Batman finally arrives to the Falcone shipping yard. He goes into the room where the microwave transmission tower's control were, and then he puts the uplink device, and Oracle says that she's connected. And then on his way to the old Panessa Studios, a long closed down film studio in Gotham City, Batman tells Oracle to send the findings of the new fear toxin to the Bat computer, because there he has the equipment to make the new antidote against the new fear toxin. Soon as he arrived to Panessa Studios, he goes to the fuse box outside and it was beginning to pour rain again. Batman hooks up the AC generator to the fuse box and starts activating the generator. The generator sends a lot of electricity into the fuse box, causing the old radio tower to be powered up again. Then Batman puts the second uplink device, and Oracle now begins to use the microwave tower and radio tower to triangulate and find the signal source of the Scarecrow's transmission. Soon she finds it and she says to Batman, "Batman, Eureka! It's coming from Ace Chemicals." And it all made sense to Batman. The chemical attack that he did on the diner, it was solely to get the people to evacuate the city, and during the chaos of evacuation, he quickly broke in with his new mercenary group into Ace Chemicals and is now using it to manufacture his new fear toxin in large numbers. Batman gets into the Batmobile and takes off. He informs the commissioner of his findings, and soon he was on his way to Ace Chemicals. On his drive out there, Oracle informs Batman that she's been checking the satellite imagery, and she says that she sees a bunch of modified flat panel pickup trucks heading out of the factory with barrels and barrels of the new fear toxin. And then Batman decides to go after one of the trucks, and he soon encounters one of the trucks. They were modified F-350s, and they were well armored and armed. As Batman was pursuing the modified flat panel truck, it had a minigun mounted underneath the bed, and it began firing at the Batmobile. After the minigun ran out of ammo, Batman quickly activates the laser, takes aim at the barrels of the new fear toxin, and fires, and the result was a massive explosion destroying the truck. A few minutes later, Batman arrives at the front entrance of Ace Chemicals. The commissioner is already there with Detective Bullock and several police officers. Batman gets out of the Batmobile and he walks up to the commissioner, and he informs the commissioner of his findings, and the commissioner tells Batman, "Well, we have no response from anybody inside, and the drone footage is showing that there's a lot of militia inside. It's a freaking buildup in there." And then the Batman says,
All Ace Chemical personnel have a homing device on them. There was a small skeleton crew left behind to attend to the chemical factory for the duration of the evacuation. I have a very bad feeling that none of them are still alive.
After the Batman was finished explaining to the commissioner the process, suddenly there was an explosion. It was a miracle that nobody was hurt, as the commissioner was screaming to see if everybody was okay. But the part of the bridge that connected the bridge with the main entrance was destroyed. There was no way inside the chemical factory. And then Batman told the commissioner that he was going to go in via grapple gun and find out what's going on inside. And Batman did that. As he grappled upwards, he finally got inside the Ace Chemical courtyard. It was crawling with militiamen. Batman wondered in his mind who paid for all these mercenaries. They had armored vehicles, they had helicopters, they were ready for an invasion. So Batman treaded very quietly until he reached an outside terminal on a high platform. Batman punched the keys and did some minor hacking to get into the system. He got the list of those personnel who stayed behind and the radio frequency number of their locator devices. He then pulls out his Palm computer, punches in the numbers, and he was now getting a signal to all the personnel. They were scattered throughout the entire chemical factory. Plus, there was a problem with all those militiamen. So Batman instant message Oracle to get control of the Batmobile and get it inside the chemical factory and take out the guys in the courtyard. Soon, Oracle remote drives the Batmobile into the courtyard of Ace Chemical by using the Batmobile's nitrous system to make the jump. Soon as it landed into the courtyard, all the militiamen began to attack the Batmobile, opening fire on it. After the men ran out of ammo, suddenly the Batmobile activates its laser dazzler and blinds the militiamen in the courtyard. But from above, Batman soon sees several armored vehicles coming right up to the Batmobile. All of them were heavily armed and ready to take out the Batmobile. So Batman orders Oracle to activate the EMP. Then Oracle activates the widespread EMP, and soon a pulse spreading 5 feet takes out the enemy vehicles and all the electronics on the mercenaries. But it was not enough. More of the mercenaries were joining in on the courtyard, and the ones who were in the disabled combat vehicles quickly got out. They all had their guns pointing at the Batmobile. There was no way that Batman would be able to take them all on, so he had no choice. He decides to tell Oracle to activate the kill mode on the Batmobile, and sure enough, the Batmobile's lasers begin to mow down all the mercenaries in quick succession. It was over. Batman decides to now search for the employees of Ace Chemicals. He was able to find 2 of them that were nearby at a foreman's office that was in the courtyard. He made his way in there, and the 2 men thanked him. Batman quickly put them both inside the Batmobile, and Oracle remotely drove the Batmobile to safety. Well, as Batman explored Ace Chemicals, unfortunately, he found the rest dead. Batman knew he had to avenge them. So as he went deeper and deeper inside the chemical factory, he saw more of those mercenaries. They were in there with other chemicals, and they were heading to the central mixing chamber. They were really making something big. And as soon as Batman made his way to the central mixing chamber, he could see that Scarecrow was in the control panel in the center, barking orders to the mercenaries to go faster, and he was punching something in the computer system. And then Batman hears the computer voice overhead announcing the blast radius was at 100%.
Warning, the blast radius is now at 100%.
Batman knew he had to stop the Scarecrow right away, and he started to take out the mercenaries quietly. And then he made his way to the central platform where the Scarecrow turns around and confronts Batman, and he says to Batman,
Ah, Batman, I knew you would come, but it's too late now. Soon the entire eastern seaboard will be engulfed in my new fear toxin.
But Batman surprised Scarecrow, beat him up, and violently slammed his head on the computer console, and he says angrily to the Scarecrow,
Stop it now!
And the Scarecrow, struggling to speak, says to Batman,
You can't stop it now. It's too late. This new fear toxin, the gas mask, won't even protect you.
Then Batman violently throws the Scarecrow off the central platform, and he begins to punch the keys into the computer, trying to activate the neutralizing chemicals. It was hard, but he was able to get them deployed. The first one was deployed, and Batman could hear the computer voice saying,
Neutralizing agent number 1 deployed. Blast radius reduced by 25%.
As Batman was struggling to get all the neutralizing agents deployed, the chemical plant was violently rumbling and starting to come apart as the plant was about to explode. Soon, the central mixing chamber was filling up with the new and improved fear toxin, and Batman couldn't do anything. He inhaled a lot of it, but he was able to succeed in getting the neutralizing agents deployed. But he was now starting to come under the influence of the new fear toxin, and as he turned around, he was frightened as he saw the Joker in front of him with a gun, and the Joker says to Batman before shooting him,
"Miss me?"
It all went black. Batman was now flashing back to early March. It was a normal spring day, and Batman had just survived the late Joker's final attempt, a plan that he had in place in case he would die, to make sure his best friend would join him in the hereafter. But Batman succeeded, and now he was at the crematorium outside Gotham City with the Commissioner. The Commissioner had spirited away the Joker's dead body after Batman placed his lifeless body on the hood of the squad car outside Arkham City's entrance back in January. Now the Commissioner was pressing the button to let the flames rise and consume the Joker's body, and he says aloud to Batman, "My God, it feels so good. After 21 years with dealing with this lunatic, it's finally over. He's finally dead." But soon the flashback was over, as Batman was awakened by the sound of both Alfred and Oracle screaming in his ear to wake up and find out what's going on. As Batman was getting back up, he hears Oracle saying, "Batman, oh, thank God you're alive. Your biochip reading showed that you've been exposed to that new fear toxin." And she goes on to say to Batman, "The Batmobile is waiting for you by the underground loading dock." So Batman quickly runs to the underground loading dock that was near the central mixing chamber. As the factory was now about to blow up, there was fire everywhere and nasty fumes that filled the air along with smoke. Soon Batman got into the Batmobile, takes it off auto, and then begins to floor it. As he was driving, there was more and more explosions. He finally made it outside and hit the nitrous boost and clears the huge gap where the connecting bridge once was. And as he landed, he gets out of the Batmobile and looks behind him as all of Ace Chemicals blows up and collapses. After seeing the fireworks show, then Batman quickly gets back into the Batmobile and puts it on autopilot and sets the course for Oracle's clock tower. As the Batmobile was driving him on auto to the clock tower, Batman was starting to have a series of hallucinations, all involving the Joker. He could see the Joker in the passenger seat of the Batmobile saying to him,
"Who knew my best friend was Bruce Wayne? I guess me and you always had something in common. Both of us lost people we cared for, and those losses drove us over the edge. Well, you were partly responsible. I mean, I didn't get this good-looking hue until you threw me into that vat of chemicals."
And the Joker hallucination keeps on going, taunting Batman.
"Think of it now, buddy. Me and you are one finally, and I'm gonna be the dominant personality. You're too weak, so let me do the running of the show while you just sit back and relax and just enjoy this brand new marriage between me and you."
The journey to Oracle's clock tower just seemed to take forever, as Batman was trying to mentally fight the hallucination, but it was not working. It was just getting worse and worse, as he was clutching his cowl, screaming at the Joker to shut up and leave him alone, to get out. But it was not working, and the Joker just kept on reminding him now that he was in his head, like a bad memory or a brain disease. Soon Batman loses consciousness and begins to have very horrific and trippy nightmares. Most of his nightmares included Arkham City, Hugo Strange, and the death of Talia. But then it all just started to turn into nightmares of the Joker, as the Joker was taunting him in his nightmares, saying that he's going to take over, and the horrific things he was going to do to all his friends.
Well, Batsy, the first thing I'm going to do is kill Oracle. She's going to get in the way of me and you. Then your butler, and then your 2 Robins that I missed in killing. And then afterwards, you're just going to be the day, and I'm going to be the night. And as soon as you go to sleep, I'm coming out.
Soon the dream devolved into Batman being locked in the cage and witnessing the Joker commit all the horrific acts that he had planned on doing. And as the nightmare progressed, Batman was witnessing the Joker now destroying Gotham City in a rampage unlike any other. But soon it was over. Soon the Joker began screaming.
What's going on? What are you doing, Batman? No, no. Oh God, I'm burning up. No, no!
Soon the Joker burst in flames as he completely burnt to ashes right before Batman, and then the cage was gone. And suddenly, Bruce wakes up in the makeshift infirmary in the Batcave. His cowl was off, he was just in his jumpsuit, and his sleeves were rolled up. He had an IV in his arm. He looks around, and he sees Kathy, and Kathy says, "Oh, thank God, Bruce, you're awake." And then she screams for Alfred. Alfred comes running up, and he says, "Oh, thank God, the new drug worked." And then Bruce asks them both, "What's going on? How long have it been out?" And then Kathy explains everything to Bruce. She says to him, "Listen, Bruce, you came under the influence of the new fear toxin when you stopped Scarecrow from enacting his plan, and you were exposed to high levels of it. But luckily, I was able to get you back to the Batcave, and as soon as I got here, the Bat computer had cracked the code and came up with a antidote, and Alfred was able to make the antidote quick enough, and we gave you a very concentrated dose of the new antidote," she says to Bruce. And then Alfred says, "And to answer your other question, Master Bruce, you've been out for 2 hours. And then Bruce is like, "Oh no, I have to find Scarecrow." And Kathy's like, wait a minute, where are you going? You can't go back out in your condition." And Bruce says to Kathy, "Like hell, Scarecrow's out there and I gotta stop him." And then he asks Kathy, "So do you make any connection with him and whoever is financing his activities?" And then Kathy goes on to explain to Bruce, "Yes, the Tigers were bought up by a private security firm named Security Concepts, LLC. And Bruce Wayne says to Kathy, "Simon Stagg." And then Kathy's like, "Wait a minute, how do you know?" And then Bruce Wayne explains to Kathy, "Oh, I know about Security Concepts, LLC. Oh, they're owned by Simon Stagg. They're not part of his corporation. They're a privately owned security corporation he started up out of his own money 30 some odd years ago. I remember my dad was very angry at them over an incident that happened during the Corto Maltese massacre back in early '89. And Bruce goes on to explain the very condensed version. "Well, back in early '89, before my parents' death, my dad got involved with one of Stagg's company. He invested some good money into it, a mining company called Atlantic Mining Corporation. They had a diamond mine out in Corto Maltese. Well, long story short, Security Concepts was sent out there to protect all the Stagg business interests out there, but also Stagg wanted the government to be overthrown and Security Concepts were helping the rebels. They were also involved in that horrible massacre that killed over 300 people, including children. Kathy was shocked when she heard that, and then Bruce goes on to explain. Then it was also revealed that the miners of the diamond mines that were owned by Stagg were being treated very horribly. Mines that my dad and several other prominent wealthy businessmen in the city had money invested in. Oh, it was a nasty scandal. I remember my dad screaming at Stagg over the phone saying that he got blood on his hands. And then my dad, with the other people who invested in Atlantic Mining Corporation, filmed a commercial that played on television for nearly a month, declaring their innocence and that they did not know about what was going on. They all denounced Stagg on that commercial too. Well, Stagg managed to bounce back, and people largely forgot his involvement in the Corto Maltese massacre. Then Oracle says, if you're going to investigate Stagg's properties, you better look at this. And she gets on the back computer and shows Bruce the satellite image at one of his properties in downtown Gotham. And there he saw the satellite image of a giant semi-rigid airship moored on top of the building. And he saw tanks and other armored combat vehicles patrolling the area, and he also saw the flatbed trucks delivering the new modified fear toxin to that location. And then she goes on to say, Bruce, there is no way you're going to get near that building. Even with the Batmobile's weapons capabilities, you're not going to get within an inch. And Batman says, well, if I can't come in street level, I'll come in sky level. And then he goes on to say to Alfred, Alfred, get the Batjet ready. We're going to need it tonight. And Alfred says, yes, sir. And then Bruce goes on to refuel the Batmobile with propane. And then he says, well, I'm not going to try to take on that entire army guarding the streets. I'm going to do what I do best. Go from the rooftops, he says to Kathy. And then he says, oh, wait, before I leave, tonight may be a good night to try these out. Then he goes over by the Bat costume vault, and he opens up a drawer and pulls out a small device that resembled an old Samsung Juke smartphone, but it was a little beefier than the Juke. And then Bruce goes on to explain to Kathy, this is my new hacking device. I had built this to replace the cryptographic sequencer. It does all what the cryptographic sequencer does plus more. And tonight's a good night to use it, said Bruce. And then he pulls out his palm-top computer and then syncs the new hacking device with the palm-top computer. And then he takes out the cryptographic sequencer and puts it in the drawer and puts the new hacking device in the utility belt. And then he puts on his cowl, turns on his Sonovox voice pitch shifter, and then tells Kathy,
When Alfred gets back, tell him to be ready to remote pilot the Batjets.
Kathy acknowledges, and then Batman gets into the Batmobile and speeds off. As the Batmobile was speeding out the Batcave, suddenly Batman hears Aaron Cash contacting him over the police band and the Batmobile's radio, and he says to Batman, Batman, listen, the commissioner's disappeared. He has never returned from the chemical factory. We found his car. It was wrecked. It looked like it got rammed by one of the big military vehicles that are running around the city. I just hope he's okay. And then Batman acknowledges Aaron Cash, saying that he'll find the commissioner. Meanwhile, aboard Simon Stagg's giant semi-rigid airship, Simon Stagg was arguing with the Scarecrow, just yelling at him for what he had done, saying to Scarecrow, I don't believe this. You kidnapped the commissioner of the police. This was never part of the plan, screams Stagg. And then he goes on screaming at Scarecrow, I can't believe you did this. Our plan was simple. You were supposed to detonate the fear toxin, and then with the cloudburst generator, I would have sprayed the cure throughout the eastern seaboard, I would have been the hero, and the money I would have paid you, you could have just disappeared. But no, this is obvious, Scarecrow. You want revenge. You don't care about making profit. And the Scarecrow answers back,
You're right, Stag. I wanted revenge. I never cared about making profit, and I played you like the fool that you are. And now you're going to be locked away along with the commissioner.
The Scarecrow signaled for his men to grab Stag and take him away. Stag screamed, No, you can't do this to me! No! Then another man comes up to Scarecrow saying, Scarecrow, all the fear toxin has been loaded into the storage area. And then the Scarecrow says to the man,
Excellent. Take about 6 to the Cloudburst laboratory and start hooking them up to the Cloudburst machine. I'll be up there in a few minutes to start the process.
Soon, outside, in a skyscraper not too far from one of the Stag buildings where the semi-rigid airship is moored at, Batman was there, looking at the army that was encamped around the building's entrance. No one was coming in. And then Batman gets on his communicator and signals Alfred to begin the attack with the Batjet, and soon the Batjet flies in, guns ablazing and missiles launching. And after 2 sweep attacks, the army that was guarding the building was gone. And then Batman thanks Alfred, and then he starts leapfrogging to the building. He finally made his way to the semi-rigid airship. Batman noted gun emplacements on the sides of the semi-rigid airship, ready to shoot down anyone or any vehicle that came towards it. But it did not target Batman. There was really no defenses, and the door was wide open, like he was expected. Batman knew deep in his mind it was a trap, but the commissioner may be in there, plus he had to stop the Scarecrow. So Batman made his way into the airship, and soon the door shuts behind him, and he could feel that the airship mooring cables popped off, and now the airship was beginning to lift itself, moving away from the building, heading higher and higher into the stormy night. And then Batman can hear the Scarecrow over the semi-rigid airship's PA saying to him,
Welcome, Batman. Thank you for flying with Terror Air. We will serve dinner around 11:30, and then at midnight will be the big show.
Batman can feel the airship shaking violently from the storm, but he also saw all around dead Stag employees, scientists, and engineers. They were all shot, and Batman made his way up to the upper levels of the semi-rigid airship, and there he found a computer terminal. So Batman pulls out his new hacking device and hacks into the terminal and gains the information he needed to know. There he uncovered the entire plot of Simon Stagg, and he also uncovered what the new cloudburst generator could do. He tells his findings to Oracle, and he slowly made his way to the cloudburst laboratory at the very front of the semi-rigid airship. And there, before he got to the laboratory, he encountered another room, and there he saw Simon Stagg in the center and a tube-shaped holding cell, and the room was crawling with armed mercenaries. So Batman stealthily took him down one by one until there was none left, and then he runs up to the tube-shaped holding cell that Simon Stagg was in, and Simon Stagg starts screaming at Batman, Batman, you gotta get me out of here. Scarecrow is mad. He locked me in here. I'll make it worth your while if you free me. And Batman says to Stagg,
I don't care about your money. All I care about is stopping Scarecrow and finding the commissioner.
And Stagg says to Batman, the commissioner is in the next room, but you gotta get me out of here. You gotta get me out of here. Then suddenly, The sound of hissing gas is heard as the sphere toxin sprays into the holding cell of Stag. Stag screams no, but then he began going mad in front of Batman. There was nothing Batman can do, so Batman left him there. And Batman ran into the Cloudburst laboratory. It was huge, and Batman could see the giant bottom half of the giant Cloudburst machine. This machine that could generate massive amounts of gas that could be dispersed on a wide area. It was unknown if Stag had developed it for a noble purpose or to be used as a weapon. Batman knew in his mind, knowing Stag, it was for both. And then he could see that the Scarecrow was at the controls, and he saw to his left that the Commissioner was there, chained up to an upright gurney. And then the Scarecrow turns around and says to Batman,
Ah, Batman, welcome. You're just in time to see the show.
And then Scarecrow signals somebody, and a group of men come out with guns pointing at the Commissioner. And then the Scarecrow instructs Batman to let himself be chained up to one of the upright gurneys, or else the Commissioner was going to get shot. Batman had no choice but to oblige, and a couple men quickly grabbed the Batman and chained him to an upright gurney. Then the Scarecrow walks up to Batman and says to him,
11:30 on the dot, Batman. You're always on time. Like I said, at 11:30, I will be serving the in-flight meal. I hope you enjoy it.
Then the Scarecrow pulls out a facial breathing apparatus, the same one that fighter pilots use, and put it in Batman's face and began to pump out his new fear toxin into Batman's face. Batman resisted, but he couldn't do anything. He breathed in a lot of the new fear toxin. And the Commissioner says to Scarecrow, Scarecrow, you goddamn bastard. You're going to pay for this when I get out of here. And then the Scarecrow stops and then turns around and walks towards the Commissioner. And he says to the Commissioner,
You're going to do what with me? You can't do anything to me, Commissioner. You're in no position. You're lucky I don't give you this new fear toxin. I'm just going to let you watch as your friend over there goes insane, and I'm going to also let you watch as I spread this throughout the entire city.
Scarecrow makes his way back to the console and starts hitting buttons, and then both men could see that the giant cloudburst machine in front began to fill with the orange rustish color of the fear toxin. It was producing a huge volume. Well, unbeknownst to everybody, the Commissioner had a ace up his sleeve, and it was a small knife. The Commissioner was able to wrestle it out and began to slowly cut the right strap of the gurney, and then he quietly began to cut himself free. The Scarecrow was busy just hitting buttons on the console while his men were distracted looking at the cloudburst machine building up more and more fear toxin. Soon the Commissioner was free, and he quietly snuck over to Batman's gurney and cut him free. The Batman looked at the Commissioner's face, and the Commissioner just moved his lips, asking Batman, non-verbally, the universal, "Are you okay?" And Batman nodded his head yes. And then the two men quickly jumped into action and began taking on the Scarecrow's goons. During the fight, the Commissioner got his hands on an assault rifle from one of the downed goons and began to shoot the others. Well, the fight was over, and then Batman quickly attacked the Scarecrow, grabbing him and smashing his head against the control panel, and then he beat up the Scarecrow some more and flung him from the raised platform of the control panel. Once everything was secured, then Batman goes over to one corner of the lab and he finds a parachute. He gives the parachute to the Commissioner and he tells the Commissioner,
Find the nearest escape hatch and jump out. I'll see you later.
and the Commissioner did that. He had found a nearby escape hatch and parachuted to safety, while Batman grabbed his palm-top computer and hit a bunch of keys. The Batjet was now coming. The missiles were armed, and it was heading full speed with the afterburners towards the semi-rigid airship. Batman walks up to the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow asks Batman,
How? How are you not affected by my new fear toxin?
And Batman answers him back.
I have analyzed your new fear toxin and already synthesized an antidote, which I took a very concentrated version of, and that's why I am here right now still sane.
And then the Scarecrow heard a familiar jet sound. The Batjet was on a collision course with the semi-rigid airship. With its afterburners on full blast, it was heading high speed right for the cloudburst machine. The Scarecrow turns around to look at Batman, and he said to Batman,
Damn you, Batman! Damn you, Batman! Damn you!
Soon the jet collided with the semi-rigid airship, and there was a spectacular explosion. The commissioner was still parachuting down when he saw the spectacular explosion of the semi-rigid airship, and soon flaming pieces rained down on his parachute. The parachute was starting to catch fire, but by the time that happened, the commissioner landed in the waters of a nearby bay. The commissioner quickly took off his parachute and swam towards the shore. He reached a boat dock and quickly climbed up the ladder out of the water. It had begun to pour down rain again. He wondered if the Batman survived. And then there, in front of him, to his horror, was the badly damaged and burnt cowl of the Batman right there in front of him on the ground. The commissioner picked it up, and he wondered if the Batman was dead. It would be a while before he found out. Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. The sun had just set in Gotham City, and the commissioner had made his way to the roof. He turns on the bat signal, something he had been doing for the last 2 weeks, hoping to see Batman. And tonight was the night. He heard a knock on the bat signal. The commissioner turns around and sees Batman was there, cape flapping in the wind, and he was wearing a new bat suit. Then the Batman says,
It's good to see you again, Jim. I'm sorry I had you worried, but I needed time to recover.
and the commissioner says, "It's okay, old friend. I'm just glad you're still alive." Batman asks him what was up for tonight, and then the commissioner says to Batman, "It seems Two-Face is back in town, and he pulled off a very bold bank heist last night." And then the commissioner tosses Batman a manila envelope that contained photos from the bank security cameras, and the commissioner tells Batman, "It seems like we get no rest, don't we?" And the Batman nods his head with agreement. Like and subscribe, the end.